Okay, so with some recent rumours and some very credible leaks, we can now start to kind of think about where Starfield is likely going to be released. This is in part because we know it has to be after Redfall. For those that don't know, the publisher behind Redfall is actually Bethesda. And so for that reason, of course, they're going to want to release Redfall fast because it's kind of like less clouted, it's got less people interested in it, it's got less of an audience, and so obviously they're going to want to release Redfall fast. Now, maybe ask yourself, when exactly are we expecting Redfall to release? Well, based on two pretty credible leakers that have been very correct in the past and haven't led us astray in years really, what we seem to be looking at is the early-ish May kind of time for Redfall to release, so we do know that at least Starfield is not going to release until then. It's obvious that as well, most likely they're going to want to wait 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, perhaps even a bit longer before releasing Starfield after Redfall. So I would say the start of July is generally when we're expecting Starfield, and I think that really does go in with when people expected it to come out, and there's a few reasons, and there's more that I want to get into in a second, but first let's really dive into where we are in Starfield's kind of like marketing cycle, right? Right now they're just kind of ramping things up. They're releasing kind of like teaser things with the devs talking about different aspects of the game, they're releasing some screenshots, and this is all stuff that we expect. We've come to get used to the game devs releasing prior to the game getting released, 6 months, 9 months in advance. And so, they aren't releasing gameplay every single week, and they're not like doing exclusives with IGN, they're not doing a bunch of interviews, they are doing a few, but it's not as much as you'd expect if they are really ramping up to release. And so that's a very strong indication to me that we likely won't see Starfield until June, July kind of time. But look, there's a bit more than this, and there's things that we definitely know are true. So we know from past leaks that it's extremely likely that internally the game devs have had trouble with bugs and also with getting flight to work, because obviously there's new mechanics that Bethesda hasn't had to deal with before, and so perfecting those has been difficult for them apparently. From internally, we kind of know that, and that generally is what we're expecting all of this extra time, this additional time to be on. From what we know, Starfield's in like a decently produced state. It's just at the moment currently kind of refining the edges and not making it an unoptimized, buggy mess on release, because that's something none of us want. What Bethesda Game Studios wants, and what Todd wants, is they want a game that really sinks into the teeth of people that play it, and they want it to be something they come back to, they play with mods, but also something that you would want to keep using the Game Pass for, right? Because for those that don't know, Starfield's going to release on the Game Pass, and so we can definitely expect to see some kind of online content or some downloadable content or seasonal content, which is going to make us keep subscribing to that season pass, right? And to make that something that people are going to keep subscribing to over the next 3 or 4 years up until when Elder Scrolls 6 eventually releases, they are really going to want this game to hit it out of the proverbial park. Whereas with Redfall, it's something that it's a newish studio that isn't that well known, and they're putting out Redfall, hope it goes well for them, but it's not necessarily the main title, and so they are going to want Redfall released fast. And by the way, a lot of other content creators, a lot of people on Reddit, a lot of people in general have been also saying June kind of time for Starfield. I don't think there's been anyone really that's made a claim that it's going to be out in like January, February time. That's not something I think anyone's expecting right now. We really are expecting Starfield to kind of release at the kind of endish date of when they said they would definitely release it by, which is the first half of 2023. Now, interestingly enough as well, E3 is on June the 12th kind of time, I think. And so do we really think that Microsoft's going to miss that opportunity to really give Starfield the showcase that it deserves right before its release date, maybe a week or two before? That's what I strongly suspect will happen. It's pretty much perfect timing to release the game just after you've showcased it at E3. That is when people are going to be the most hype. I think that makes the most sense. I don't really get why you would release Starfield just before E3, so I don't expect it. It could be in July, and I don't want to say that it isn't, because it could be, but most likely June. Really, mid-June, late June is when we're really expecting Starfield to release, maybe even pushing in a month more. Now look, I know that obviously Starfield was initially supposed to release like several months ago now, and so people are getting a bit impatient. People really would like Starfield to release. Hopefully we're not going to have to wait too much longer. Okay, now I'm also going to kind of counter what I've said so far a little bit, and that is that Scozy has said, and that's the guy that kind of has leaked stuff from Starfield in the past, a few years ago now, But, you know, he has leaked stuff from Starfield, or at least he helped that stuff get out there, right? He didn't leak it himself, he just made it, like, available to more people. Anyway, this guy was saying, like, maybe mid-2023, it might be delayed a bit more than we initially thought, and so it could be pushed back even farther than kind of June, July kind of time. But again, there's nothing that I've seen that supports that, there's no sources that I've seen that have supported that, there's nothing that I can really say other than some guy saying that there's speculation that that's actually going to happen. Other than Scorsese actually saying that, again, the best evidence that we have right now really is that Starfield is going to definitely release after Red 4. Red 4 is most likely kind of releasing in the March, May kind of time. And right now we also know, of course, Bethesda has committed to releasing in the first half of 2023, which would be the June, July kind of time. Last thing I quickly want to touch on is the head of Xbox Game Studio did do a podcast with a few other content creators on YouTube, and he did, in passing, mention that Red 4 is kind of going to release after Starfield essentially, but he didn't really say anything. He said nearer the end of the calendar. Again, what does that mean? Does that really mean that it's going to be pushed back? Again, I don't think so. I think we really would be clutching at straws really to get that kind of assumption out there. And by the way, I will leave these sources in the description as well, because I know that some YouTubers don't do that these days. I generally don't do that, but I do think for this kind of like very specific type of video, it's important to have those sources out there so that you can look for yourself, make your own decision. The amount of games coming out over the next 6 months and even year is actually pretty big, especially on Xbox One, so it's difficult to really think, oh, there's nothing else releasing in this month or that month, so therefore it's more likely. The absolute plethora of games coming out in 2023 is absolutely absurdly big. Obviously as well, there's some third-party games that are going to be releasing on Xbox as well, so things like Diablo 4. So we can tell, obviously, Starfield isn't going to release on the same day as Diablo 4, and so there's some kind of weeks that we can definitely cross off, but it would be very difficult to come up with enough weeks to really kind of pin something in as a likely release time for Starfield. It's just not possible. Again here, I think a lot of people are forgetting that Starfield is generally done right now. It was slated to release a few months ago. Right now, they most likely are making the game more well-defined mechanically, like again with better ship flight, and most likely fixing a bunch of bugs and making the game more optimized. Again, that's what this time is for, and so they are most likely transitioning over to full production of Elder Scrolls 6, and most likely it's just people working on the game engine. And maybe if there's like a character they decided actually they want to get that re-dialogued and put that back into the game. Maybe they're doing some stuff like that, but I don't think it's going to be anything major. You know, again, the game is mostly done, so we're not expecting them to push this back again. This, you know, I would be the first to say if I thought it was going to get pushed back. I just, right now, I don't see it getting pushed back again. It wouldn't be a good look for Todd or Bethesda in general, or Xbox. I don't think it's likely right now. But again, the lack of information from the Starfield devs has had people a bit like confused and not knowing what's going on, and had people kind of like, what is happening, guys? You haven't said anything. There's only like 6 months left, 5 months left. What's happening? Please give us some information. But again, they're not doing it. Fine. I guess that's just how it is. Subscribe to the channel, by the way, if you haven't already, because it does help so much to subscribe. You have no idea. I only released Starfield and other RPG games like Fable and Mass Effect. I'm only talking about those games anyway, so I encourage you to subscribe. Have a wonderful week. I'm out. GG. Bye-bye.